Welcome to episode 3 of Hikaru's Heresies. In this episode, we will be covering the mechanic of the magic carrot. The magic carrot is perhaps the most common complaint about Killer Bunnies for those who dislike it. In this episode, I will provide my rebuttal to those complaints. For context, I have a few complaints to show you. I have, of course, blurred out the names of the reviewers. Primarily, we have complaints about randomness upon randomness, and how the game is completely pointless, and many other hurtful things said. Pure chaos, they say. Let's take a look at some rebuttals to this idea that the game is purely luck-based nonsense. I have several rebuttals to provide for you today, and I'm sure I could provide more, but these are the ones I came up with for this video. These include game design philosophy, the mathematical necessity of the carrot lottery system, probability and statistics, and strategic analysis. First, let's take a look at some game design philosophy. It is quite common in games like Settlers of Catan, where very early in the game, or at least during the mid-game, some of the players will be very clearly losing, and some of the players will be very clearly winning. And there usually isn't many opportunities to change that fact. The game is decided within the first few turns. Same thing goes for Dominion. Dominion is a game I played quite a bit before Killer Bunnies, and oftentimes the game would be decided by a certain card missing the shuffle, or one player going first, or one player getting a 5-2 split, or one player getting a 3-4 split, wherever it was optimal to do so. Very often, the game was decided very early on. Several games have this issue of a clear winner or a clear loser revealed quite early in the game, either within the first few turns or at the very least within the mid-game. Often, the player in last place doesn't receive much opportunity to recover. So what happens? This frequently causes toxic consequences, including king-making. That's where a losing player makes sure that a certain opponent wins because he has nothing better to do. His other option is to meaninglessly go through the motions of playing the game, even though he has no opportunity to win. Killer Bunnies, on the other hand, directly solves this problem. All players always have reason to play the game until the very end, because there's always potential to increase chances of winning. No player is ever truly out of the game until the final turn. This makes the game quite suspenseful up to the very end, and suspenseful gameplay is exciting gameplay. Moving on to the mathematical necessity of the carrot lottery system, let's use Dominion as an example. In Dominion, victory points are gained typically through provinces, duchies, and estates. The game is over when all of the provinces have been purchased, or if 3 piles have been purchased of anything. In Killer Bunnies, the game is over when all the carrots have been purchased. These are somewhat similar mechanics, but there's an important difference for why Killer Bunnies cannot have a point-based system. Many players suggest a point-based win condition as a house rule for Killer Bunnies. Unknowingly, with this house rule in place, assuming players play correctly, this drastically increases game length. The reason why is because once one player is relevantly ahead, the other players ought not to gain carrots, since this will cause the opponent to win faster. Once a player is ahead, you need to find an alternative to gaining carrots to try to catch up to them, because you will not. In Dominion, we often find this scenario where one player gets a significant point advantage, and it is not often correct for the other player to purchase the province, even though that's worth the most points, because that will cause the game to end faster. Assuming the players can gain provinces, or in this case carrots, at a similar rate, the player who is currently ahead will win. Ironically, this house rule creates a pure luck of the draw scenario by creating a full reliance on high value cards. Once one player is ahead on carrots, the other players must draw highly impactful cards such as Atlas Shrugged, or Zodiac Terminator in order to possibly have a chance at winning. Let's move on to a discussion on probability and statistics. So of course the common complaints people have is if I only have one carrot and my opponent has all the rest, there is still a chance that I'll miraculously win. In the example of starter set, if I have only Tucker, my chance is 8.3% chance of winning. The rebuttal? Players must realize that the strategic depth of Killer Bunnies is found in increasing the probability of winning. If we compare this strategic depth with the strategic depth in a game like poker, in principle in poker, a player could never get a winning hand, and he might have to bluff his way out of everything. However, in general, the higher skilled players will statistically win more often. The correctness of a player's decision is measured in the probability of their success. And this is actually the case in many strategy games. An example that I play is in Hearthstone. When looking at professional Hearthstone games, as it is in esports, skilled players are recognized by their ability to min-max to their best strategic potential. However, even when they do this, their plans can still be completely ruined by random events, and it's not always the case that the highest skilled player will win. It is statistically the case that the highest skilled player will win. Finally, let's take a look at strategic analysis, what I consider the best rebuttal. Killer Bunnies is ultimately a game founded completely on social interaction. Surprisingly, this puts Killer Bunnies in a similar genre as a game like Diplomacy, Diplomacy being the game about area control, where players don't have set alliances but will manipulate and form alliances and perhaps betray their opponents. In Killer Bunny's setting, there are actually infinitely many strategies currently available, by nature of it being a social interaction game, all of which are viable in the proper group. Without the carrot lottery, perhaps 90% of these strategies would be lost, causing the game to be entirely luck of the draw. If the winner is determined by the most carrots, then only strategies that can achieve the most carrots will win. However, in current Killer Bunny strategy, it is not always correct to have the most carrots because that makes you a very large target. In some groups, you may end up with more carrots than you would have if you don't attempt to have the most. So if changing a win condition, because it's supposedly purely luck based, causes there to be less strategic depth, turning the game into another bland take that genre game, rather than a strategically complex game about social interaction, is it really a change that should be made? By no means. In my opinion, the carrot lottery is one of the best game design decisions I've ever seen. And to reduce strategy by removing it for the sake of strategy, that's pure nonsense. This has been episode 3 of Hikaru's Heresies, looking at the mechanic of the magic carrot. This is a bit different than the other Hikaru's Heresies, as there is a lot of opinion in this, so feel free to continue the debate in the comments section below. I'm sure there will be some counter arguments presented, and I will personally respond to every counterpoint. And as always, Jeff Less.